He didn't say that the other day. He was very weak the other day. So the other day he said it like, well, he doesn't know. And now I guess he feels a little bit emboldened. He must be careful with what he says.
Donald Trump telling Chris Christie he needs to be careful with what he says. Brad Melke is covering this circus in New Hampshire for ABC News. Good morning, Brad Melke.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, New Hampshire's actually kind of the epicenter of the Christie-Trump war tonight. Chris Christie's in town right now. Donald Trump will be joining us later today when he speaks to a crowd up at the base of the White Mountains here. So it should be interesting.
So his speech today is going to be on fiscal policy?
Well, he's actually doing a couple events today. He's doing a larger rally. That'll sort of be a classic Trump event. He'll say whatever he wants to say. But right before that, he will sit down for a half-an-hour interview on fiscal policy. He'll be probably talking about his tax plan and his budget plan. Remember, he unveiled that tax plan back in September that would see basically everyone pay less in taxes, both lower-income Americans, but also big businesses as well. So he'll be going over that as well.
So he's under fire for his 9/11 comments in which Chris Christie says they're not there. These people weren't cheering. He's come under fire for mocking the disabled reporter. When you talk to Trump's supporters in New Hampshire, how do they defend him?
I think when you talk to Trump supporters up here, they basically say that what we are talking about is sort of these media talking points that don't necessarily have any effect on their day-to-day lives. What they're worried about are sort of their personal home economics, their personal finances, their personal taxes that they're paying, and they don't necessarily see they don't see the issue of what people were saying or doing on September 11, 2001 in New Jersey as a real issue that is impacting their lives. Now, I think a lot of people would speak to sort of the tone that that may be pervading the dialogue here when you talk about political rhetoric, but a lot of people who maintain their support for Trump say it's just not an issue and that the media is really drumming up this more than it affects them in their day-to-day lives.
If you were to believe them, then C-SPAN would be getting all the ratings.
Yeah, exactly. You'd think that a calm, sane, rational approach to home, personal finances will be driving the conversation, and that's not necessarily what we're seeing, is it?
Yeah, no. Are the crowds? How big are the crowds up there for him?
Well, they're smaller than you're going to see in the rest of the country. Georgia, he spoke to over 10,000 people last night. You'll never see a crowd like that in New Hampshire, although Trump has garnered the largest crowds when he comes here, sometimes 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. That's a big deal in a state where, Jeb Bush often gets a crowd of 100 or 200. Carly Fiorina speaks to 75 people at a time. And even favorites like Marco Rubio, he packed a barn last night in New Hampshire. That was less than 500 people. Those are what you're normally seeing. So when Donald Trump brings 4,000 to a high school, still a pretty big deal up here.
Yeah. Donald Trump, you mentioned Marco Rubio, Chris Christie now going after Donald Trump. When these candidates go after Trump, what's the reaction from the crowd?
Well, like we were just saying, the crowd is usually not very large for someone like Chris Christie. But he's really experiencing a resurgence in New Hampshire right now. He got a big endorsement from the New Hampshire Union Leader, which is the only statewide newspaper. It says they're going to put their support behind Chris Christie. He got a few big statewide activists on his side in the last week, so he really thinks he can do well here. He's practically living here in the state. And if we start to see these poll numbers change, we are going to see a reaction from candidates like Donald Trump, like Ted Cruz, and even some candidates like Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush who think that this is their state to win. Chris Christie really thinks he can do well here, and he's certainly getting a reaction from other candidates like Donald Trump already. So people and voters here seem to be responding as well.
Brad Melke, ABC News correspondent, right there in the middle of the three-ring circus called the Republican primary in New Hampshire. Brad, thanks for checking in.
Thank you.
656, Big 550, KT.